Hello, folks. Welcome to My First Business, and welcome to what's going to be a very, very juicy episode, I hope. So I'm your host, Naeem Pervez, and I started this podcast because I'm a very new and very clueless business owners, and I'm looking to have conversation with seasoned entrepreneurs so they can guide me and inspire me and help me avoid the common mistakes, help me identify opportunities. Basically, I'm borrowing mentors by the hour, and I hope they can be yours as well. Today's guest is Varun Malik. Welcome. Varun is the best kind of guest that we can have on this show. Varun, first and foremost, is a highly experienced management consultant. He's worked with government entities, oil and gas, educational institutions, real estate companies, banks, and they need him so that they can think a lot clearly about their business, their governance, their strategy, their team management, talent management, their business processes, risk management. Basically, just sort their businesses out, and that's what Varun helps them with. Varun earned his chops at PwC, where he spent 6 years, and is proud to have hit revenue targets crossing $4 million annually. And as an entrepreneur, Varun has set up a new age consulting firm. Let me see if I can pronounce this right. Konsalidon. You got it?
Right.
I got it. Konsalidon is a network of 200 senior consulting teams, and through their digital platform, they operate an agile global consulting firm with very low overheads. Varun, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Naeem.
We're going to go in a lot of different places where I was just telling you about the genesis of the podcast before we started recording as well. So you can just imagine all the different lens that we'll go to. I do have a warning. Have you seen the movie Memento?
I have.
Yeah, that's how my brain works. So the time stamps on this podcast, we're going to go a lot of different places. But I think the best place to start would be, given the name of the podcast, what would you say was your first business?
My first business. I set up a training firm in Delhi, in India, in 2010. Completely inexperienced. I'd left a consulting firm called Protivity, left them in 2010, moved back to India for about a year. So I've spent most of my life here in Dubai. So Delhi isn't the most comfortable cities to live in, you might. And went about setting up the training firm, me and a friend from college. Failed in about a year or so, and failed miserably at that. But it was a great experience. We added some real value to some of the clients that we worked with in that 1 year. Really learned a lot, and that's, I think, what matters. So I set that up in 2010. That was before I joined PwC. So I was there for about a year.
And you failed miserably. We're going to jump into a lot of failed miserably stuff because that's what got me excited to bring you on. The first time I had a chat with you over coffee, the presence of mind that you have to recognize your own failures and smile through them and see them as learning opportunities is what struck me as, I want this guy in my life. But I want to talk about that specific first business in a different context as well, because depends on your surrounding. When you were starting, what was the reaction of your friends and your family and people that were in your life? You were leaving a job, assuming a well-paying job. How are people reacting to this? People that you consider important in your life. Were they giving you advice? Were they giving you objections? What were the conversations like amongst those people in your life?
If I recall right, I did not have a real concrete plan to set up that business. I had left my job in 2010 here, and I just wanted to go to Delhi. I was taking a sabbatical for a year. And in conversations with one of my friends who I mentioned, we decided that we want to set this thing up together. So this wasn't one of those planned, oh, you're going to, like I did the second time I did this. The second time I, left a job, I had a concrete plan, right? I had a plan about 6 months before I left PwC This is what I want to do. Here's the idea that I'm going to pursue. I didn't know what the idea would turn out to be, right? But I had a general idea of what I'm going to do. I had my first employee before I left PwC. Spent about 3 or 4 months getting the website together, getting the initial team together, the idea together, and so on. So it was much more planned. And at that point of time, I had a lot of discussions with people around what I'm going to go about doing, and I was in a much more senior role. The first time when I left Protivity and then set up this firm was called Zig Edu. So when I set up Zig Edu, I don't think we had a name before I'd moved to Delhi. I don't remember having a concrete idea of what I was going to do. I don't even think I knew I was going to spend a year in Delhi. So I don't think it was a smooth, transition where I had a lot of discussions with people around me, right? But at the same time, my dad has run a business for many years. And he's probably the only person in the family, close family, who's sort of run a business. And I don't think, if I recall right, that he thought it was a very good idea to do that. And most of my friends, they were quite encouraging. The startup scene had just sort of started in India, and there was a lot of companies who were, a lot of startups that were coming up. And so I think it was quite, it was, there was a lot of encouragement around that time around. So,
yeah, I can imagine.
And I don't think I had a family that was depending on me, and I did not have too many responsibilities. I was 26, I think 26 probably. Yeah. So it was much easier.
Yeah. We were facing. I'm asking this question because I just got over the hurdle recently. We started our business like 2.5 years ago, and when we initially told our families, both my side and my wife's side, my father-in-law is like a lifetime banker, so he's worked in corporate banks throughout the world, and safe, secure, get the salary, climb the ladder. And same thing from my dad's side, so the initial hurdle of like almost being disappointed in us for starting our own business, and we're much later down in life as well, right? So it's not one of those things like, oh, it's okay, take that risk. And I think they've just come to terms with it in the first year that we started. And I talk about this because some of the listeners or watchers or audience are entrepreneurs, and some of them are new business owners, and some of them are experienced business owners looking to up their game. There comes a point in time where you have to make a mark with your business in the sense that I know this is working and this is going to pay the bills, and you can now rely on me, especially if you have dependence on, right? But that first one, I think for you was a trial round. Would you say, was that your attempt, like, okay, let me try this and see where it goes? It sounds like it was a bit more a subconscious effort versus a fully conscious effort, or was it somewhere in between?
Absolutely.
In between that?
Absolutely. Somewhere in between. I wasn't a serious entrepreneur, right? I was someone who was going to be self-employed for a few months and just wanted to try it, right? I think this time around when I left PwC in 2017, it was a much more serious attempt. I knew that I'm not going to go back to the job market, right? If I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail and I'm going to start something else, right? So that was a conscious attempt that I'm going to be in business. Whereas the first time around, it wasn't as much, right? I knew that, I'm going to try it out for 8 months, 9 months. To be honest, most, startup gurus, they say fail fast, right? Of course, the startup ecosystem wasn't as mature and there weren't as many startup gurus then. And we hadn't heard of the concept of fail fast, but somewhere fail fast, fail forward. But somewhere at the back of my mind, I knew that if I'm going to fail, I'm going to come back to Dubai and I'm going to join a job.
Like you're still pretty highly employable, even if it goes down.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I don't think I was thinking very much. And that's one thing about entrepreneurs, isn't it? That, if you're you mentioned, if you're a sort of lifetime, banker, as an example, right? You're obviously a lot more, don't necessarily want to take the same kind of risks as an entrepreneur does. And perhaps you're more intelligent. Perhaps you're, more careful with the things that you do. Whereas, when you're 26, 27, you can think about taking a step like that without worrying too much. And I think that's where I was. I wasn't too worried about anything back then.
Yeah, but you said something really key in the middle of that. You said you had a lot of learning in that. So when you're at that age, the conversations also start around MBA or do your master's or go for this extended program in INSEAD or whatever, right? So I think did you have that mindset, like even if I fail fast, even though that term wasn't that popular, did you have that sense of mind to think like, I'm doing this, like I can either pay $200,000 for an MBA at Harvard or I can lose money here. Either way, both are going to give me lessons that go throughout, or was that a realization after you'd failed that, okay, well, at least I learned something?
Yeah, realization much after. I don't think I was thinking as much, honestly speaking, right?
Yeah.
And which was great, right? I mean, I think if I had thought everything through, I probably wouldn't have done it, right? And I think that's, in hindsight, that was a good thing, right? I mean, I'm not saying everybody should do it or everybody can do it, right? But it was a little earlier than I should have done. Should have gotten into entrepreneurship. I should have gained a little bit more experience, in hindsight, of course. And it just wasn't, it just wasn't as
thoughtful.
Thoughtful, exactly. It just wasn't as thoughtful at that point.
Well, you mentioned that it was all about taking action. So not saying you're not thinking, but like thinking less and more biased towards action. And that I've seen, at least in the people that I talk to that run businesses, there's a serious bias for action versus overthinking, over analyzing, over studying. And I say this from personal experience. So my wife actually started our business because she is much like you in the sense that what's there to think about? There's much to do.
Yeah.
And we balance each other out because I'm the opposite. I'm like, what's there to do? We need to think about this. And I'm learning, and I think I'm improving this bias for action. Is it something that you do, that you think you have naturally, this bias for action? Has it improved since that time? Like, is it stronger now in that sense? And, what would you, if you were to think about it now, that it's coming to a realization that, yes, I do have a bias for action, what are some of the things that I can borrow from that mental framework to help me too?
Yeah.
What would you say?
I think as a person, as anyone who's getting into business, or even anyone who's working as an employee in an organization, right? I think the important thing is to do what you feel right at that point of time in your life, right? Yes, you must have a bias for action, and yes, you shouldn't overthink things. If you overthink, you're never going to take that step, right? I just think I heard something from Jack Ma recently, and it just made a lot of sense to me, right? Is in the time, in your life when you're between 20 and 30, you should try and work in a larger corporate, work in a larger business, try and learn from others who've done it and done better than you can yourself, right? Learn how to be a professional. Between the time you're 30 to 40, you should then go about taking risks and trying new things. You might not have children who are going to school and so on. So you can take a lot more risk, etc. From the time when you're 40 to 50, you should focus on doing what you're good at, So stop taking as many risks. You should have figured out what you're good at and then start doing that, right? And then from the time you're 50 to 60, you then sort of give back, right? Give back to the younger generations. And after you're 60, spend time with your grandchildren. I think at that point of time, if I sort of use that framework broadly, I don't think I had enough experience to actually really run a business well and learn enough from that experience as well. An MBA at that point of time might have actually been a great idea, right? But then again, I was just in that state of mind where I just wasn't thinking enough. And in hindsight, it's worked out so well for me, right? Because I got that kind of experience at that point of time. I've used some of the learnings in the next time. There are some things about your nature that you can't change, right? But there are some things that you can learn from and you can try and reflect in the next business that you do. But coming back to your point around having a bias for action, 100% you need to have that. In my case, I think, yes, I did, I'm a lot more thoughtful now than I was back then. And, I was a lot more energetic and a lot more, I would take actions faster back then than I actually do now. So sort of the opposite of what you're saying.
So let's dive deeper into that. So decision making is something I want to talk to you about, right? Like your decision making when you're 26 on your first business is much different than decision making now. Do you take more time with it? Because I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but now your decisions are worth much more than they used to be when you were 26.
100%.
Right. So are there any frameworks in your mind of how you make decisions? Is it still your gut and intuition? Because that's what I'm hearing from like when you were 26, gut and intuition was playing a giant role. Is it still playing a big role, but now it has some sort of a framework around it, supporting it? Because we have like the left and the right brain, right? The intuitive one and the logical one. Are you balancing them out, or are you still sticking more with the gut and intuition?
I'm learning to consult. I think that's the biggest learning that I've had in the last few years. I've been lucky in this current, this current role that I have in the organization that I run. I'm lucky to be surrounded by people with a lot of experience, right? And I'll give you a little bit more background as well.
Please.
But I've figured over the years that I've been told, Varun, this isn't such a good idea, don't do it. And I followed my gut and said, no, this is my business. I'm the one who's affected the most by it. Let me go about doing it, right? And I've gone ahead and done it and suffered, right? And I've done it again and again and again. So over the period of time, I've started appreciating, and as a consultant, they say like doctors make the worst patients, right? So consultants make the worst businessmen, right? We give great advice when it doesn't really affect us. I mean, I'm not saying all consultants give great advice, right? I mean, but in general, consultants, the value that you bring, or advisors, the value that you bring is you're able to remove yourself from a situation and take a decision based on facts, on experience, based on what others, what you've advised others, and things that have worked and not worked and so on. But when you try to do it for your own business, it's a lot more difficult, right? And I think what I've learned is to be a little bit more of a listener, someone who actually takes advice, tries it out, and it might or might not work out, right? Not all the advice that you take or all the decisions that you take will be wrong or right, and all the advice you get, some of it might be work out very well for you, some might not work out well for you. But that one thing I've certainly learned over the years if you're getting good advice, why not take? Oh, if you're getting advice, at least listen to it, try and take it, and don't necessarily be headstrong. And I think I was, as when I was 26, 27, my first business.
Yeah.
And even when I started Konsalidon a few years back, I would do what I thought was right.
Right. Instead of testing that idea through a channel. I mean, I totally relate, because as marketers, professional marketers, we love doing it for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
We're awesome at it for our clients. We suck doing it for ourselves. Our own
Absolutely.
marketing campaigns are either non-existent,
Right.
or they're not put as much thought and effort has not been put into them. So I really like when you go ahead.
On that. So that's also because in your case, right, you work with most of your clients, correct me if I'm wrong, work in B2C.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So you have great experience on B2C and how to sell to end customers. And that is very different from when you're selling B2B, right? Which is selling for yourself. And you might not necessarily need marketing skills in your own business, right? You need more branding and then, of course, selling, right?
Yeah.
So that might be the reason. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's a brainwave that I'd never connected the dots that way. That we are good at B2C marketing. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can do it for ourselves, and the approach and everything is completely different. But I like what you were saying about learning to be a consultant and in essence be consulted as well. I'll tell you realistically, for a long time I was very anti-consultant minded. And this is a core belief I've recently changed. A couple of guests actually that came on the show helped me reframe my thinking around that. So for the longest time, the biggest negative about consultants was that, well, they don't have skin in the game. They come in, they offer advice, and then you suffer the results of it, whether they're good or bad. So if you don't have skin in the game, you can't be trusted. Or don't take advice from someone who doesn't suffer the consequences of the advice going bad. Now, that was my thinking for a long time. And that's just the kind of media I was consuming, or maybe the books I was reading, or the people I was listening to. But I heard two very different things recently. One, we had a consultant on the show, and he said, when you hire a personal trainer, you should ask him who his personal trainer is. So when you hire a coach, ask him who his coach is or her coach is. Because if they're not buying into that model for themselves, they're not going to be doing the same by you. And the second thing, person was running a video production company, and he's very open to working with consultants all the time. And he said exactly what you're saying. He's like, listen, I can bring in someone who doesn't have my baggage. He doesn't have the same stresses of my day to day. He can step on the outside, be subjective, or be objective and look at the situation clearly, take lessons from what he's been reading, the clients he's been consulting, the industry trends he's been following, or she, and bring it to your business. So you said, it's a no-brainer. I would always work with a consultant. And it literally in the last 3 months is when I've changed my mind on this. And now I've come to, I'm actually looking for one. One turned me down because he says I'm not ready for him. I need to grow a bit, but it's good motivation. I'm going to switch the conversation now to having or pivoting. I feel like the last time we talked over coffee, one thing that really strikes me about you is that your ears and eyes are very open to opportunities and making them a reality. And based on how things are going, you're able to be very present in the moment and react to things. So I wanted to ask you about pivoting. What has driven your kind of pivots? Are they partly necessity driven, that you need that pivot to survive? Or, firstly, would you even call them pivots? And secondly, are you the kind of person that likes to chase opportunities because they sound like a good idea and you're like, okay, resources now directed towards this? How do you think or conceptualize your pivots?
Yeah. I tend to follow opportunities, right? And that can be a very good thing and can be a very, very bad thing as well, right? Let me give you a quick background on what Konsalidon does, and sort of it'll help you and the listeners to sort of understand how we've pivoted. We've pivoted 4 or 5 times in the past, right? So when we first started, we started with setting up a digital platform without having a CTO, which was a big mistake. But started by setting up a digital platform that would make connections between clients who needed some advice, who needed, to take advantage of an opportunity or solve a problem. That's when you call in a consultant, right? When you have a problem and you want to solve it, or you have an opportunity and you want to take, somebody's advice on how to take advantage of that opportunity. So we set up a digital platform where clients would come in when they have a problem or when they have an opportunity, and we would have a boutique consulting firm who we could connect them with to help them solve the problem or take advantage of the opportunity. We obviously, I think one of the biggest reasons why that model didn't work is not because the model wasn't good, but because we didn't have someone who had the technical skills to build a real platform, a real scalable platform that could grow exponentially. So we tried that model there were many other business reasons as well, right? It became very clear. Our competitors at that time, and I'm going to name some of them because they don't exist any longer, was an organization, and I hope they don't listen to this, because I guess they had the same idea as me, but they implemented it differently. And these were guys who seemed to have a technology background more than a consulting background. And they built something called Consult Cart. And unlike us, we've been a bootstrapped startup right from day one. They started with getting funding, the usual startup route, which is, by the way, the best way to set up a company that is going to be scalable needs money, right? It's great to bootstrap if you're a small business, if you're setting up, if you're going to be self-employed. But if you're going to create something that is truly exponential, it's a good idea to get money behind it. Of course, you shouldn't get money until you know how to make money with that money, right? Because I heard someone say this, and sort of that was the main reason why we were bootstrapped, is because I heard someone at the start of my entrepreneurial journey say, if you can't make money without money, you cannot make money with money, right? And I said, I said, why don't I learn how to make money with this model first, and then we'll go to raise funding. Looking back, it's a very bad idea. People put in money in an idea when it's new, it's novel, it's tried out in another market, or not tried out but looks great and looks like a solid. And there are many other reasons to fund a startup, right?
Yeah.
But when you actually run the startup for about 2 years, 3 years, and then they ask you for your financials, etc. And if you haven't gotten to revenue by then they won't believe in an idea and put money into your business. Anyway, so I'm going to get back to the point quickly.
You can take your time, but I do want to interject for a story I was listening to about Duolingo. Actually, the founder was on a podcast. Are you familiar with Duolingo?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
So the language training app, brilliant app. I almost learned Spanish from it. But they started with this, extremely scalable way to teach language to millions, if not billions of people. And, at one point they were valued in the market for $500 million without ever making a single dollar of revenue, and without the CEO or the technical founder ever having a clue about how they will make money. And he was quite proudly saying, we didn't get into this to make money. But then, over time, he had the realization, well, that's what a company is. It has to have paying customers to support it. And, they said, well, they didn't want to charge because they want to spread education as freely as possible. And it wasn't until 3-4 years of them developing where they had millions of users already. So the valuation was based on the number of active users, daily users, and how much time they're spending on the app, with the hope in mind that money will be made later. But the CEO had no interest for the first 3 or 4 years. And only after that, they're like, okay, I can't keep, it's a Ponzi scheme, right? You can't keep raising money to pay off the previous guys and never make money from the business. So it happens, I think, more often than not, where people are putting in money without ever thinking about how to monetize a certain project or an idea as well.
Absolutely. But like I said, if you don't know how to make money without money, right? You can never make money, even no matter how much money you have. If the business model doesn't work, you're not going to make money out of it at any point in the future, right? That's why even I don't know the correct statistic about this, but I'm pretty sure 1 in 5 funded startups actually succeed, right? 4 out of 5 of them fail. Funded startups, right? And maybe 1 out of 100 small businesses and startups and people who get into self-employment return to the job market, right?
Sorry, I cut you off.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to the first model, so we didn't have a technical founder. Once I had conversations with a lot of boutique consulting firms. Okay, sorry, I was telling you how somebody else started with the same idea. They called it consult cart, right? And you don't buy advisors from a cart. You don't buy consultants from a cart, right? And it's not just about the name, it's how you think about it, right? So once we'd had conversations with boutique firms, one of the good things I've made a lot of mistakes when setting up Konsalidon, but I've done a few things which have actually really worked out in our favor. So one of the things we did well was we interviewed a lot of boutique consulting firms and had conversations with them, not even formal interviews, right? So just telling them about the idea and would it make sense for you to participate. And before actually putting up our first website, I'd probably spoken to about 70 or 80 boutique consulting firms and told them about the idea, got their interest. They'd confirmed that they will sign up, and then we had our first website and we started signing up boutique firms. But it was very clear in the first 6 months, 7 months, having those 50 or 60 conversations. I should have had more client conversations as well to see what end clients really wanted, end clients of this platform. I didn't have as many because I didn't know what to say to them, right? I did not know, I've been a consultant. I had been a consultant for about 10 or 12 years before that. So I knew very well that if I go to a client and I tell them that I'm building a platform and you can come to our platform and you can get a consultant, you can for a problem that you'd usually go to, for example, a PwC or a KPMG or a Deloitte or a McKinsey, BCG or Bain, and I'm going to get you a platform where you can get to a boutique firm to come and solve that same problem or take advantage of that opportunity at a much lower cost. They'd be like, no, that's rubbish. I knew that, right? So the idea needed to be packaged very differently for the clients in the region.
It's almost like an Uber problem, right? Like you need enough drivers and you need enough riders, people, and you're kind of trying to balance the value proposition to the consultants that would be providing the service versus the leads that you'll be generating for them, and making that value and having enough numbers on both sides at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the problems, right? Ours was also a value proposition problem because when you're buying, when you're buying from Uber, it's a simpler transaction. Obviously, it's a very technical problem to solve as well. Okay, and it's a great supply demand problem to solve, but what you're buying is commoditized. Going from point A to point B in either using going from point A to point B, keeping it simple, right?
There's nothing bespoke about it.
There isn't as much, right? But with our model, it had to be a problem which could perhaps be confidential. You can't just put it up on a platform. It's a very big problem to explain. You're a large, hospitality company. You have 20 hotels. You're not going to go to a platform and share your problem with God knows who's there, right? You'd want a consultant or an advisor to come to your office, have a conversation with them, sign an NDA before that and things like that, right? So it just wasn't, setting up a platform wasn't the solution, right? It's not just about confidentiality. You're probably going to buy through your procurement process. Procurement doesn't have the time to go to a platform and look for a boutique consulting firm, right?
It's not like Fiverr, right? Where
it's not like Fiverr.
You post a gig, like, I need a website.
Correct.
Okay.
For
$5. Let's do it.
Yeah. So it's not like that. This is $50,000 you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
To start, right? So what we realized that a platform is not the solution. You need somebody sort of in front of the platform, or sort of as a front layer to the platform, who can actually go and have a conversation with the client, understand the requirements, someone that they know and trust, right? So what we started doing was, instead of building a platform, and this was like 6-7 months down the business, we started building an ecosystem where you would have two types of players. One is really experienced people who clients know and trust, and the client would go to them, talk to them about a problem that they have, that they want support with. They would use our platform to find the most relevant boutique firm, and then they would then together go and meet the client and submit a proposal, pitch the proposal. It's a long sales cycle, right? It takes anywhere between 3 months to 2 years to actually close a consulting assignment, right? If it's consulting assignments, normally on our platform are between $50,000 to about $1 million, and we've done projects above $1 million as well. And you're not going to buy it off a platform. So what we had to do, so that was 2017. In 2018, we had to change the model to become much more of a traditional consulting firm to the clients, right? So to the clients, we would look like a traditional consulting firm with 3 or 4 senior people at the front end who would go understand these problems and then source consultants from the ecosystem, where we had about 200 small consulting firms. We would pick the most relevant consulting firm and take it, go together with them to a client as Konsalidon.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure.
this? So these multiple iterations of the business that happened, and I'm sure a lot of people listening also are experimenting with multiple iterations, and some of them, I wanted to check with you. When you do make up your mind to go with a certain iteration, like this is the next evolution, do you go all into it, or do you lightly experiment and have some milestones for, like, okay, I'm changing the whole outlook of this platform. Now on the front end, it looks like a consultant, but do you go fully into that, like you direct all resources towards that, you've changed the complete timeline, or do you lightly test out these things before? In general, just your thought process about moving in different directions. Is it all in or lightly
No, there are
experiment?
indicators already that you have
Yeah.
that this is the direction you need to go into. You see a little bit of success in that direction and then you pivot, right? We've pivoted 4 times, 5 maybe. We haven't necessarily done a pilot each time, but what we have done is seen some success in that new direction and then move towards that direction.
And the success is soon enough, like it's comfortably close to when you started it, the pivot.
Before we started it.
Before you started?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we moved to that direction. I'm very opportunistic, right? So, the first time we saw some opportunities to move to a different model, won a few projects in that direction, and said, why even bother with the previous model? This new model is so much better. Let's move in that direction, right? And I think chance favors the trained mind. So it's not like we've chanced upon that new model. We've gone towards that new model because, we're not going to make money in the previous model. It's very, very clear. Second, we have made money in the newer, the pivoted model, etc. we don't necessarily know all the pitfalls of that second model, which is why we moved to a third pivot, right?
It's like almost partially accidental, because things in the universe just happen for you to open that door, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to step in this door now. So like context is our business when it was started, accidentally started. Alina was a freelancer working on a few clients. Lo and behold, she had enough clients that she didn't know what to do with, had to hire a team. And now we need to build a business around it. And every time we bring on a new client, there's a new opportunity. You know, we're selling, let's say, package A, and they're like, hey, can you guys do package B? It's like, no, we don't do that, but you know, some of our competitors do it. And then we, as you are, opportunistic, looking at these things constantly, like, well, we can just add it now. Let's try it with a client or two. Look, it works. And when it says, like, as you said, like the success came, like, look, it works. Then we kind of make that as a part of like, okay, this is the direction we're going through. But I wanted to ask about the not so successful pivots, in the sense that it's a strange question. Have you ever done a reverse pivot? So you've gone into a direction and you realize, you know, what you had before was better. And have you ever managed that kind of transition where you dropped a new idea to go back to the old way? Or is it always the case that once you do pivot, even if it's a failure, you pivot somewhere else without coming back? How do you think about that?
Yeah, because sometimes maybe an idea wasn't, the timing just wasn't right for that first idea. So it's completely possible that you move back. So, I mean, we were, after about 4 pivots, we were thinking about, we didn't, but we were thinking about going back to the first model that we started with, right? Which is, which perhaps the time is now, right? Because now people are much more open to buying services digitally. They're much more aware of models like Fiverr and Upwork.
TopTal.
Perhaps, yeah. And there are so many more platforms. So it's almost become like an industry, right? There are, at least by my count, at least 50 to 60 platforms that have raised funds, that have sort of done several substantial projects. And I'm sure there's hundreds that haven't had success and are on the verge of closing down or have closed down, etc. But it's almost become like an industry now, sort of having a platform. In fact, all the large firms have over the years now set up their own platforms where you can go to that firm. EY has set up a talent exchange. PwC has set up, they've all, or maybe PwC has set up a talent exchange and EY has set up another model for it. And, most consulting firms are considering getting into a more digital model to buy their service, making it easier for their clients to find consultants and buy consultancy services from them. So maybe we thought it might have been the right time to go back to that first model. We didn't do it, but
it's on the cards.
It could have been on the cards. We're sort of going through our 5th pivot now, so we're sort of moving to a different model anyway.
Yeah.
Right? But I think we've made a lot more money in each model that we've moved towards. We've created a lot more impact in each time we've pivoted. There have been, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, each of our pivots have had certain sort of fatal flaws in them, which will mean that they will never make it into a much larger, more impactful business, right?
Yeah.
What we do not want to do is remain a small business, right? And unfortunately, most of the ideas that we've set up so far, 2017, where we set up a platform, 2018, we set up a decentralized ecosystem that I described. In 2019, we set up a centralized ecosystem where we sort of got a lot of our partners who were sort of front-ending to come and be a part of Konsalidon rather than independent participants in the ecosystem. And so each pivot that we've done has been more impactful, has been more revenue generating, but isn't that idea that's going to make a real impact, a disruptive impact in the consulting industry. right?
Right. But that's
And then it's very, very important to pivot then for me, right?
Yeah.
It can't just be another consulting firm.
What you're holding yourself quite strongly to that. Do you have a time frame of when you think you will arrive at that pivot, or is work already started on that?
Yeah. This time I have given. So the good thing is with the fourth pivot that we have done, we're quite comfortable as an organization. We're doing several consulting projects in parallel. There's several really great consulting teams who are adding immense value to clients, and the kind of feedback that we're getting from clients is very, very different from the kind of feedback I would get even when I was in the larger firms, right? Because our model it's expert driven, right? So for example, I'm working with a hospitality client now. The project is being led and delivered by someone who spent 30 years in the hospitality industry, has been a CEO of a hospitality holding company, and he's been in the shoes of the CEO of the client we're working with, right? And that is a completely different experience to a person with 5 years or 6 years experience coming in, doing an analysis and creating some reports for you and so on, right? So Pivot 4 is really working, and so there's no real pressure, financial pressure, to move to Pivot 5. But there is that pressure of, Pivot 4 isn't going to be as big as this can potentially be.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to keep improving the business model.
Yeah, it's Kaizen, right? New constant improvement.
Kaizen is continuous improvement, and it is incremental improvement. Whereas what I'm talking about is orbit shift, right? So moving from our first model to the second pivot was an orbit shift, and we're sort of completely shifting the orbit. It's not just continuous improvement. You still have to make those continuous improvements within those pivots, of course.
Yeah. And it's tell me if this is better. Like, my probably last question about pivot would be, it's easier to take the winning parts of what already exists and trying to remold them versus doing 100% or 180 degrees kind of shift. Has that been your experience? Do you take the best parts?
Both.
Yeah.
You do need to do both, right?
And that's the balance, that's the challenge, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the one good thing is, it's like a painting. You can take it in whatever direction you want it to. There's no rules around it. And that's the reason why many of us become entrepreneurs, right? Because we don't want to be bound by the rules of that have been created over the years. Those rules work, right? Doesn't mean that they don't work, but you don't want to be bound by them, right? And I think you have to take the good parts. If something is working, take it. But if it doesn't fit in the larger scheme of things of that new model, you have to drop it, right?
Yeah.
You have to make sacrifices. You can't just...
I love that you said that it's like a painting, because when I sat and meditated about why I started a business, 3 things came to mind. Number 1 was for a lifestyle of my own choice. This is how I run my day, who I spend my time with, what I end up doing the most. I want to control that more often. I can do that more with my own business versus being an employee. Not saying I cannot do it as an employee, but more control. Second was money. So it wasn't the first or the last, but second was like, it needs to meet my financial goals. And the third is what you said about painting. I wanted to start a business as a creative expression. It is, it's my output into the world in a creative way, which is my own flavor, my own masala of how the imprint I leave on the world. And as such, it's very hard for me to make 5-year business plans. Maybe I don't need to, maybe I do. I'm too small of a business to even predict 90 days, 180 days at a time. The longest plan I've ever made is 90 days. And I love that part of it, though. I find that constant, like day 89 check-in, like, how are things going? Okay, shall we move forward? New 90-day cycle starts now. It's your creative baby. It's like, because I'm a musician as well, so I know when you write songs, when you start jamming, you don't know what the song is going to be. you don't have any idea what the chorus, when it'll come in, when's the verse, what words go where, what's the tune, when the drums kick in and go out, and it just builds up, and you have a world filled with art. And I hope, more people would run their businesses as art, just like without being too heartless. But shifting topics, mentors. I wanted to see, or here's the question then. Who do you call most at 2 a.m. in the morning for business advice for yourself?
No one. I don't talk about business at 2 a.m. But I do think about my business a lot at 2 a.m. sometimes, right? I mean, we all have those sleepless nights.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think in that aspect, I've been very, very, very lucky. I've had some great mentors over the years, only because, my business model requires that, right? So most of the people that I work with are consultants themselves, and a lot of them depend on us for increasingly a larger part of their business, right? So in 2017, some of the firms that were serious about their participation in our model, we had 200 firms who signed up. Maybe only 20 of them were really serious about it. The other 180 were, let's try it out. It's free, right? So those 20 firms, they gave us some really good advice and really good mentorship about how our model should be, how we should run our business, because it would affect their business, right? Those 20 firms relied on us for one project a year when we started. Now they rely on us for about 50% of their revenue in the year. And they're integral parts of our business. And they're all people with 20, 25 plus years of experience, some of them more. And I just happen to be lucky that, I have them as mentors as well. All of them have been, in business for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years as consultants, of course. So I'm really, really lucky. I have other mentors who are not involved in the business. One of the things, again, you can call it chance, but I was invited to be a part of this group, a mastermind group, just 4 people on that group. And we meet once a month, discuss challenges that we have in our business. The others, again, lucky for me, have more experience in running businesses than I do. And I use that as a great sounding board, or that forum as a great sounding board, use them as a great way to discuss challenges, improve our business model. And I tell them everything about my business, the good parts, the bad parts. And that's what you need, right? When you're talking to a mentor, you need to be as honest and as open with them. And you need to tell them, they need to spend time with you. You need to spend time with them. And they need to understand the intricacies of your business, right? And I think, going back to the start of our conversation where you talked about you need a consultant for your business, I really don't think, any small business needs a consultant, right? Small business owners either need a coach, a mentor, or an advisor, right? A coach, someone who would push them, or don't need to have all three, right? A coach, someone who would push them, more fatherly, more, performance oriented. Mentor, more motherly, more advisory, more as a guide, etc. And they don't necessarily need to be from your business, right? And then you need advisors, and your advisors, I don't necessarily think they can be paid advisors, right? I just don't think it'll work great as a relationship. You wouldn't be able to afford them. I can't afford an advisor for my business. No way. They wouldn't. So it has to be someone who's do a free mentorship session like this.
Yeah.
Great idea,
the
right?
podcast.
do a podcast.
I get all of these. Like
Yeah,
each episode is either a coach or a mentor or an advisor or all three in one.
Yeah.
I love the framing of that. The coach is more of the one that pushes you forward, gives that motivational. Like when you're on your 9th push-up, he says you can do 2 more.
Yeah, that's what they're trained for, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're trained for.
Mentor is more of like a listener who's, sharing their wisdom by letting you come to your own conclusions. And the advisor is a bit more hands-on, I'm guessing. In like, I don't see the distinction between advisor and the other two as much. Is it advisor? Like, are you thinking of like someone who's on
like
the board
of father?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so coach, father, mentor, mother, grandfather, right? I mean, has a lot more experience, is a lot more wiser than you.
Yeah.
Is from the same business. Can give you, can remove themselves from your situation and then give you sort of objective advice, I would say.
How would you say you create value back for this relationship? Because, what pisses mentors off is it becomes a give kind of situation to a point where they don't want to see you or talk to you anymore, right? So if you are investing time or if someone's investing time in you, what's a nice way to, give back? And it doesn't have to be physically give something back, but, what I found for myself, and I want to add more to this, is just be respectful and not waste the time that I've been given and, not become a burden, even though you go to these people with problems mostly, right? Not always about, hey, this is a new opportunity. Can you help me figure this out? Like for me, at least right now, it's 80-20, 80% problems and 20% opportunities. So how do you suggest, or how do you keep these relationships engaging on both fronts and make it long lasting as possible, especially if you are getting value from it, you're enjoying the relationship? How do you give back and make sure that the relationship lasts for as long as possible?
Yeah, when you're an entrepreneur, so if you're an executive, right, it's completely different, right? So you can afford to pay a coach and you can afford to pay a good coach, a professional coach, and it's a completely different
dynamic,
relationship, a completely different dynamic, right? When you're a small business or an entrepreneur yourself, I think you need to find these advisors, mentors, even coaches, not coaches as much, but definitely mentors and advisors from within, your friend circle, business circle, a place like, a co-working space, for example.
So they need to be a bit more organic. The whole relationship, the starting point or genesis of the relationship is not the mentorship. The starting point was something else, and it happens to have flavors of mentorship in there. Would that be?
Yeah, that's how it's worked out for me, to be honest. That's how it's worked for me. In most cases, I think one of my mentors, in his words, likes to spend time with younger entrepreneurs. He's a very, very successful entrepreneur himself, has about 20 businesses in his portfolio, 20 successful businesses, no debt ever in his business, of course. For example, he just says that he likes spending time with people younger than him. It keeps him young, right?
So that's enough for him too. Yeah,
that's enough for him. I, of course, recently have started doing business with him as well, which is a great, reason for him to meet me and spend more time, etc. Right? At the end of the day, there has to be something in it for the other person, right? In the case of another mentor, he's a part of the mastermind, and I think he's written a book about entrepreneurship and has great advice to offer on that front. And I think he likes sharing that advice and so on. In the case of advisors, I think they should be, when you're a small business, an entrepreneur, startup, they should be involved in your business in some way or the other. Mentors can be more organic, etc. And coach, if you can afford it, I think it's a great idea. I was really lucky. One of my business partners was a coach, because, on our platform, what we had done is, besides providing just management consulting, we experimented during COVID to try and provide legal services and coaching and training and other professional services and marketing and advertising and so on. And we set up a sort of mini platforms. And one of my partners was a coach, and I think every conversation with him was a learning experience, right? Because he has so many frameworks that he's that's the good thing. Someone who's become a professional coach, they've had great coaches themselves. I think that's the only way that model works, if I'm not wrong, right? So what you do is you go to a coach, that coach trains you on how to become a coach, and then enables you to get your certification. So some of them have had world-class coaches who have sort of trained them, helped them to become a coach. And I've got some amazing frameworks to apply in my business from a coach. Highly recommended. I haven't paid for a coach yet, but highly, highly recommended.
It's almost like having someone else read all the books for you and just come with the notes of like the most important pieces. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm going to switch gears again, as I will, to something completely different. Maybe related, because you had me thinking about affording coaches and affording things. I'm just talking about pricing now, and without probably getting into details of what you charge, but the commonality between us is we charge for intellectual services, right? At the end of the day,
absolutely,
there's a bit of like, yes, clicking and typing that needs to be done that can be commoditized, but majority of the price that we promote, like we work on retainer models, for example. We have a monthly fixed fee. Maybe there's some commission on top for results, but we're always trying to figure out pricing for ourselves. So we have a different models to look at. We either look at competition. Okay, what's the going rate in the market? Absolutely worst experience there, because what we offer looks so commoditized. It isn't, but it looks so commoditized that you have people in different parts of the world doing it for $10, and there's people on the other side of the world doing for $10,000 for the exact same thing.
Yeah, and some of those $10 guys are really good.
And some of those $10,000 guys are really bad, like
absolutely
on both sides. So,
absolutely.
So that doesn't work for us, because there's no point doing averages. There's no point doing that. So we started looking at, okay, how much can we get away with? Right. That was the other strategy we tried. Okay, let me just throw out a number to the client, see if they accept it or not. And if I have 10 leads that I'm following up with in my CRM, and they all have been given proposals, and they're all A/B testing our price. We gave them this price. How many of them balked? And then we started figuring out, okay, for this size company, this price doesn't scare them. For this size company, that doesn't. But it's a constant iteration for us, because we're at the end of the day trying to figure out, it's not a widget. I can't just apply a margin. So I'll tell you another thing we did. We started calculating time that we spent on every task. We started doing the whole model of like, okay, it's going to do...
must have hated you for that.
Absolutely. And I said, there's this timer thing on the browser, just click on it and see. It's like, no, don't worry. I'm not going to blame you for not working. So that's no fun for anyone.
No way.
Because you know why I stopped that? Because I wouldn't do it myself. And if I wouldn't do it myself, I can't ask someone.
It's the biggest reason I left the larger firms, because all large firms maintain timesheets.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And trust me, if I did my exit interview, and I might have even said it in my exit interview, these timesheets are the worst invention in productivity management, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
So sorry, go ahead.
No. I can talk really bad stuff about that. So I'll protect some egos there. But how do you view pricing for a client? What's your philosophy on it on a high level? And how has it changed from the first time you did business, which is back when you started Zig Edu, to now, even though they're completely different businesses, but the underlying frameworks and the models of how you think of pricing, how do you come up with your prices?
So I've learned a lot from the larger firms, of course. Law firms, accounting firms, many consulting firms do more hour-based pricing. So what you do is you come out with a hourly rate, and you say that on this project, Manish is going to spend 6 days, Varun is going to spend 4 days, Devana is going to spend 20 days, and so on, right? So that's one way.
But how do you figure out the hourly rate? Is that an aspirational rate, or?
We're sort of lucky because, again, we've been in the industry so long that we've figured out what I know exactly what, McKinsey charges per week, and then the next, which is BCG and Bain charge per week, and then what PwC, KPMG, EY and Deloitte charge, and then, and then what boutique firms charge, and we know it really, really well. But the other thing that I would sort of think that firms should consider, because this is one way. The other way is value-based pricing, right? At the end of the day, how much value are you going to add to the client, and how much percentage of that is that client willing to share with you? Yeah. So that's sort of a mix of the two. But the important thing, and Simon Sinek says this, around the purpose of a business is not to make money, right? Just like the purpose of a car is not to make fuel, right? Fuel just helps the car run, right? The purpose of a car is to go from point A to point B. The purpose of a business is, the purpose of your business is to, create impactful marketing campaigns and add revenue to your clients, right? The purpose of my
would you like a sales job at company? That's exactly it. Yeah.
Perhaps, and maybe it should be a little elevated than that. I just said because it is the first thing, but the essence, right? Yeah. The purpose of my business is to solve clients' problems through wisdom rather than analysis, right? Because the larger firms do analysis and then give advice based on analysis and some experience, some benchmarking. In our case, we create impact through wisdom and experience, right? Because we run an experience model. But the purpose of the business is not to make money, but you need money to survive as a business. And a car will not go from point A to point B without fuel. Similarly, a business will not go from point A to point B without, and it doesn't have to be revenues, right? There could be many other ways for a business to go from point A to point B. It could be external funding if your business justifies that. If you're not a profit you said, the translation Duolingo. If the founder did not want it to be a profit-making entity, he could have easily found a different way of, it could have been funded by the UN, for example, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's a very, very important. It's very important that you get your pricing model right, but don't think only about cost basis, but also value basis. And at the end of the day, most things across the globe are getting demonetized. Like I said, the $10 guys are doing an amazing job. Why would someone pay $10,000, right? Honestly, the only reason someone will pay $10,000 for something that is available for $10 is because of perceived trust in the $10,000. And of course, you should go about creating that trust and creating that brand and creating that premium. And those are great ways. But what every business, I think, should be looking at is to try and offer the same service, the same value at a lower and lower price, right? And still make money while doing it. So if that is your goal, then I think you'll get your pricing right.
I think like the essence of what you're saying is like focus on delivering the value first. Like do the thing that you said you will do, make an impact, a positive impact on whoever you're doing it for, and then you will be compensated accordingly.
Yeah.
And partly the market decides where you will be compensated for. And let's say you think you're creating a lot of value, like with our advertising we can immediately see the ROI because it's linked directly to, like, there's no better marketing than advertising, because every dollar earned is linked to a certain campaign, right? Versus something like a website. You built a website, how much web money did that website make? We don't know. Or you did SEO, you wrote like 5 blog articles, how much revenue did that make you? We don't know. Probably some, but with an ad campaign, you can. So we try to keep that return on ad spend calculation right at the top. But what we're learning from some of the masterminds that we're in with other agency owners, they're saying that, what you're able to charge is just your own mental limitation. And these are kids like 24, 25, and they're charging ridiculous amounts, but they're providing value too. But they have shorter retention spans. So this is where the competition comes in. The market decides for you. So you get away with your ridiculous pricing, but you get away for 8 months because someone else cold calls a client, cold emails a client, say like, hey, I can do all of this. What are you paying? $8,000 a month? I can do it for 4. And then the market decides for you that that wasn't the right price for you. So
I think, too many professional services business owners think it's about maximizing, share of wallet, right? So for each client, how much more can I make out of that client?
How much can you squeeze?
That's I think is a short-term approach, sort of.
Yeah.
You should charge what's fair, and change your business model in such a manner that you're able to survive and thrive as a business while charging charging your clients fairly.
Yeah, I learned this lesson from a mentor a long time ago. So I was a foreign exchange trader in a past life. I was the guy with the 3 screens, and I was doing a lot of corporate hedging work. So working with larger organizations, working on their foreign currency exposure and risk management, and employing those tools like FX forwards and options, and helping them create like long-term strategies. And we would, let's say the client calls like, hey, I want to move Canadian to US, X million. What's the rate now? And I had full discretion as a trader to put my markup. So I'd be getting my supplier rate on the screen. So I can buy your US for $1.20, and I can go to the client and say like $1.25. 5 pips on a certain million is a good amount of money. And the initial people that trained me said, squeeze as much as you can. So the more comfortable the client gets with you, the more the relationship builds, keep increasing that spread because they're not going to know, which was, a terrible way to think about it. And
it worked, right? It worked a few years back.
It worked for short term.
And I think it worked for a much longer term 20 years back.
Yeah.
Right? But now everything is so transparent, right? I mean, there are so many options available.
Yeah.
It'll work for a much shorter period of time now.
Yeah,
right?
but you're more likely to burn relationships that way. Until I moved to a different team with a mentor, and he said like, he had relationships with these clients for 10 years. Mm-hmm. He could literally charge whatever he wants because he knows he's bringing. He didn't, out of good conscience. And that's what he trained me for. He's like, look, I know I can be making double, triple the money. Mm-hmm. But it's not, I don't want to be caught being that guy who took more than I should have. Like, are we meeting our targets? Yes. Am I living a comfortable? And he was making decent money. He was making $250,000 a year by not overcharging his clients.
Yeah.
And this was the top trader in the company. He had the biggest book of business in the company. And I said, you are not gouging your clients. All the small guys are. So that was a lesson for me. And we're trying to like take that as much as we can with our current pricing too.
Yeah, it's a very scarcity mindset approach, right? Is I have only these 6 clients. How can I make the most out of them? But there's 60 million other companies that you can be working with. And instead of getting 6 clients, you can get 20 clients, spend the same amount of time and charge them fairly, right? And build a team with you, right? If you can't do it alone, build a team around you that can actually help you with that, right? I think, unfortunately, too many boutique consulting firms think like that as well. And they lose out on so many projects just because they do that, right?
Yeah.
They think, I've got this really large name client. Why don't I would have done this for company A for $100,000. Why don't I charge them $250,000? Because I don't know when my next big client is going to sort of arrive, right? So what they do is, because they're waiting for clients most of the time anyway, right? And then, but that client knows that it's not worth $250,000. They probably didn't 10 years back.
And they can smell your commission breath too. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so you just shouldn't, in general, you should, if you've created a great brand name for yourself and, you provide, so everything that you charge for, you should provide something in return, right? So when a larger consulting firm is charging a higher rate, they deserve that. They've taken 60 years to create that brand.
Absolutely.
They're an insurance policy, a rubber stamp for the client who's sort of taking them on, and they deserve it, right?
Absolutely.
So if someone who spent 30 years working in a certain industry, charges a higher rate because they have that kind of experience, I'm not saying that's wrong, right? But what I'm saying is that if your if your pricing isn't optimized, you're going to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this whole thing about, the knowing where to hit the nail versus just doing the action of hitting the nail. Yeah, someday I'll learn to tell that story better because I want to tell my kids when I have them about that story, because that what literally is like, you've earned that ability, or you have earned the right to ask for that kind of fees, let's say.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, that something you were saying in there when we got about commission breadth, the companies that I've worked for in the past, so you have a sales pipeline, but you also have an upsell pipeline, which I think completely distorts the way you manage your relationship with your clients, because you get upsell targets as well. So they're saying to you, or management is saying like, good, we're making money from like current clients, but can we make more? And they put a target on it, so you're forced to make more. What might be better, instead of having an upsell pipeline, you say, how many clients will you increase value for this year? Yep. Or what are the different ways you will increase the value of, or the impact of our services to this client? And then watch the upsells just come in themselves.
Yep.
Versus setting a dollar target, like, 3 million in upsells this year. Go ahead, mark your opportunities, open up Salesforce. Like, where's your target list? Who have you called recently? And that just creates that kind of bad relationship with a client too, right? Because every moment you're just searching for like, what can I sell? What can I sell? What can I sell?
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but as companies grow larger, you have many more people to feed, right? And that's sort of the pressures come in, and and you create those bad behaviors, right? But I agree with you 100%, right? Promise what you can deliver what you can promise, deliver what you've promised, and then I think you'll see clients coming to you almost automatically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and over deliver if you can. If you're a smaller firm, you have to over deliver, isn't it? Yeah.
100% all the time. We don't mind it. Like it truly comes from the heart at this stage of the business that we're in. To go over and above and beyond, if I were to do calculations, there's ROI there. If I were to do, but I don't do it because I know we're doing it from our heart, and it always comes back. The karma always works out that kind of way. There's an improvement in relationship, longevity of client, retention is longer, upsells are a lot easier to come by. Like, they come to us, we don't go to them to sell anything if we go over and above. And it's very hard. I want to talk about this actually too, especially for the new generation of people coming into the workforce. This over and above thing is very differently perceived, right? It seems like a very millennial boomer kind of thing to do. And I know, and you know what it takes to close a client. In a sea of consultants or in a sea of agencies, it's very hard to distinguish a couple. And then to bring them on and agree on a contract and then keep them forever is a big, pardon my French, it's a big fucking deal. So if you have that relationship going, a bit of over and above here and there at their request is something that, it's like when you're looking for a job. If you're 24, you're out of school, you're looking for a job, that's a lot of work. You got to apply to a ton of companies. Your resume doesn't look that good. You interview a bunch of places. Not all of them work out. So when you do get that job, it took a lot of work to get that job. And so when you do work on that job, a little over and above should be on your mind, because what if you were to lose that job? You go back in the cycle. So I've been thinking about this over and above mentality in your organization, the people that you surround with, and I'm going into team management next, but how do you assess this kind of mentality around the hiring stage And how do you cultivate this on an ongoing basis, even if it is cultivatable, like if it's teachable? Does it come intuitively to certain people? Can you recognize that? Does it come in lower quantities for some people, and can you improve that? What do you think about this whole over and above mentality?
Can you figure it out during the hiring process? Probably not. Again, I'm not an expert at at reading and understanding people during the interview process, but I've made mistakes, right? And I've learned from those mistakes. So when I used to hire in 2017 and 2018 is very, very different from how I hire now in 2022. In 2017, 2018, what I used to do is I used to do a thorough interview process, and then I used to make an offer, and I used to have a probation period like the larger firms. That's what I've learned, right? Have a probation period. During the probation period, a shorter notice period, and then a longer notice period after you get confirmed as an employee. I hire very differently now. I try to get people on short projects with me first before getting them on as an employee, because I find it very difficult to understand during the hiring process whether that person is going to bring the right skill set. Even by the way, I mean, right from PwC and Protivity before that, during the hiring process I would make the potential candidate create a presentation, present it to us, meet a few people, not just one person, right? But it doesn't work any longer, right? Because so I like getting people on short projects first.
It's like a trial run almost,
like
right?
Like a trial run, right? And not even get them on an internship, right? Not even on probation. Get them as an intern 3 months, see how they do, evaluate whether they're going to continue doing that as an employee. And even then I make mistakes, right? And people go above and beyond sometimes for because that's who they are, and then sometimes because you're really nice to them and they can see your sacrifices. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, everybody makes a lot of sacrifices. I think it's important to let your team see some of those sacrifices. They won't really know perhaps what you're going through, but they will know to some, some people will, understand it, feel for it. Some people might not, and that's fine. But I think the people who really understand the sacrifices and the real hard work that you go through while getting a client. The other thing that I've started doing, sorry, maybe I should finish that point. Yeah. I think there's various factors, and I'm not 100% sure whether it can be created, right? I mean, there are some traits that sort of come in primary school, and we meet most of our team members after they've graduated 20 years, 21 years, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a little difficult to inculcate. But everybody's capable of going over and beyond, right? It's a matter of whether they want to do it for you or not, right? The other important thing is, which I've started doing of late, is, if I've won this client, it's for you. If you don't deliver well, then you lose the client. Or you lose, not necessarily lose your job. And I'm not a heartless person as well. Mm-hmm. But, it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to sustain you if we lose this client, right? And giving accountability. So very recently, we've signed on a client where we're going to be doing business development for them in the Middle East and Africa. And I've told my team, I show them exactly how the revenue from that client is being distributed. Mm-hmm. So if it's, as an example, $25,000 a month, that $25,000, I keep only $5,000. The remaining $20,000 are going to person A, B, and your team, right? And if A and B don't deliver, we lose this client. And I mean, that money is, you lose it, I don't lose it.
Yeah.
Right. So I've changed my compensation model to sort of link it a lot more to client revenue as well. Within the Konsalidon, the pivot of Konsalidon as well is a lot of the boutique firms that are that are currently working with us as external parties are now actually merging into Konsalidon. So we're becoming one large consulting firm, slightly more traditional, with each of the boutique firms losing their sort of brand name, taking the Konsalidon
white
brand.
label, almost white labeling.
They're becoming partners and owners in the Konsalidon business, and they're becoming owners of the business, right? So, and the thought process there is that, unfortunately, over the years, we've created, when you own a company, right? So it sort of becomes your, of course, it's your baby, and then you focus completely on it, right? And so, for example, if person A and person B were in PwC together, they'd be great friends. But then person A is going to go and create Konsalidon, and person B is going to create Prescience, and they're not going to really work with each other. They've created that artificial border around themselves, artificial sort of company border, which doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So what we're trying to do is trying to dissolve those borders, come together. We're all working towards a common cause. We're not doing a great job in creating a brand name for ourselves anyway. If we sort of all come together in one brand, we will at least create something meaningful, something that can make impact, right? And I'm trying to
collaborate instead of compete.
I mean, the whole model is built on collaboration. So, but rather than collaborate as boutique firms, almost collaborate under one single brand, one single umbrella, right? Form a larger firm together. But very importantly in that, all projects that we get, almost all of the revenue goes to that person, right? So if they lose the project, even if we've helped them win it, if they lose the project, they lose the revenue. As simple as that, right?
So it drives their incentives and their behaviors and start getting aligned because of that.
Absolutely.
Right?
They're no longer employees, they're owners.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now their incentives are aligned. You want to talk about yourself too. So have you worked on a job description for yourself?
Oh, no.
No? Ever?
For myself?
Yeah.
No, I wish I had. Great idea.
It's something that we're trying to do right now, and you'd be surprised. Not a lot of business owners do it, right?
Of course.
Have you read E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber?
Unfortunately not.
It's like one of the first things he recommends in the book. He's also a small business coach who's written a book, and it's been standing the test of time for 20 plus years now. And it was a bit of an overwhelm from my end, right? I woke up one day and I didn't know how to prioritize my task list. So then I asked myself, what is my job? And I looked at the whole thing, and first thing you do is like, okay, prioritize from 1 to 10. I couldn't do it. I was like, everything is a 10. Everything is a 10. How do I do this? So I started writing down this job description, and it's 8 pages long now. And I was talking to a potential coach for my business, and he said, your job description needs to be 1 page. He's like, 8 pages, you're mad. Either hire people to do some of the work for you, or cut or stop doing some of the unnecessary work that you're doing right now that you think is important. But generally speaking, though, you are aware of all the different hats that you wear in the business. So I wanted to check, which hat do you enjoy wearing the most? Which one gives you the most energy? Which is the most fun to do? Which comes easiest to you? What do you enjoy most? Like, which hat, like if you were to define a section of what you do, what would that be?
So very broadly, yes, I'm very well aware of what my role is, even if I haven't written it.
Yeah.
And the role keeps changing, of course, month
Absolutely.
on month, quarter on quarter.
Yeah.
And at times I have told my team that, look, for the next 3 months, this is my role and this is your role. So, let me focus on this, because this is top priority for us. We won't survive if I don't focus on this, right? So that's the thing that I would love to do and spend the most time on is just bringing people together, creating connections between, and that's my whole business is based on that, right? And that's what I'm good at. Again, going back to the thing I said around that Jack Ma said really about in your time between 40 to 50, do what you're good at. And what I'm good at is business development, bringing projects in, and most importantly, connecting people, right? So I'd love to have a role in which, and I'm working really hard towards that as well. Is I focus mostly on the connections between the people in my in the firm, and they won't be my team any longer because I'll be one person in the team as well. Once the boutique firms join us, and there's about 20 boutique firms that are sort of merging to form one larger firm. And then we plan to grow it to about 40, 50 boutique firms sort of coming under one sort of larger umbrella. And then what I would love to do within that sort of model is be the connection officer, right? So make connections between the various people, because I'm bringing most of them into the umbrella as well.
Do you like doing puzzles?
Yeah, and I don't spend a lot of time doing puzzles. I used to at some point, but that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, people don't realize the kind of synergies that can be created if you have the, if you're talking to the right kind of person.
Yeah, if the pieces fit.
Yeah, I would do amazing as like an exhibition event manager. I would do amazing. Yeah.
Just like a host for a big gala.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to do, I want to get to 50 episodes for this podcast, and then I want to throw a big event.
Great idea.
And bring all the guests together and just like have that osmosis happen and everyone to meet each other. So, I'll have you as a ghost for that.
I would love that.
Yeah.
We did that last year. I think at around March of 2021. We did this one summit, online virtual summit. It was still mostly locked down and all of that. Most countries, not the UAE, luckily. And I had 70 of the boutique firms in the ecosystem. I asked them to create a 60-minute webinar, and I put all 70 webinars together, and I had about 1,800 people from across corporates and other businesses across the Middle East region come and attend and listen to those 70 firms. We did it over 7 days. I think we did more than 80, 90 talks, workshops and things like that.
Wow.
All online.
Yeah.
And we have no event management experience. So we created a website for it. We did everything, and it was great fun. And I'd love to keep doing, and it was a great way to connect, these boutique firms to their potential clients, connect those clients to knowledge and expertise from the boutique firms. It was brilliant.
And you had fun doing it.
That's the point, right?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, because I know that comes very naturally to you. And we've talked about this before, the nodes of the network and how they connect, and they've shown up in your life, these nodes when you needed them the most. And because of one conversation you had with person A at some point, who knows person B, and then completely changed your life.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you for selfish reasons, how do you manage your knowledge of who is what and where and what they're up to and keep in touch? Do you have a systemized process of keeping in touch with people that you meet and know?
Yeah, I try to have a system. I won't say we follow it all the time. So in our case, it's our business. So we have a model: recruit, onboard, engage, win, deliver. So we recruit a boutique firm into the ecosystem, and then we have a sort of using Monday.com, which is a project management tool.
Yeah.
Like Asana. Most people would know Asana.
Yeah.
So where we have a separate board for each of the boutique firms that we have, and it's all searchable, and they come in and tell us which industries they work in, which solutions they provide, who their main clients are, and it's all searchable. So if we need, we need somebody with experience in hospitality. We just do a search hospitality and we get, to the right person. And in our case, we ask them to upload a resume there. We ask them to create something called a 6660, which I think every organization, every small business especially should create.
What is that?
A 6660 is a pitch, a proposal, a teaser, a pitch, and a proposal, right? So the 60 seconds, 6 minutes, 60 minutes. So a 6-second, 1-page sort of teaser. So when somebody asks you what you do, you can just send them a 1-pager. Nobody has more time than 60 seconds. Anyway, that's like the elevator pitch, right? And then you have the 6-minute document. So when you meet them, it's a 5-6 slide presentation, which you can present to them after you've understood what they do and so on. Never pitch first, right? Always ask the person for the requirements, and then you can make the pitch. And then the 60-minute document is important. It's never sent out to anyone, but it is whenever you have a client who needs a proposal, you sort of take that 60-minute document and pick slides from it to use in the main proposal, right? So 6660. So the firms create the 6660. So we have a lot of data in our case that we sort of search and reach
as needed. Yeah.
There's many other ways, to be honest. Like,
but what about someone like me? Like, me. Am I on some system right now?
So that's where I think what we try our best to do. Any boutique firm that we meet, we try and onboard them into our ecosystem. When we recruit them, they sign a network firm agreement with us. Next, they sort of go through that onboarding process. They fill this template and so on, right? We've actually stopped doing it temporarily because we're sort of shifting the model. But at some point, Naeem, I'm sure a lot of people were really annoyed with me. Whenever I would meet them, I would tell them, if they were a boutique firm owner, of course, why don't you onboard into our ecosystem? And
full sales pitch was on.
And much more in this case, because we're not selling to them because they're not paying us anything, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, we're asking them to collaborate with us in the ecosystem. So our model, by the way, is success-based fee. So what we do is when we get a client from, and we help a boutique firm win a project with the client, we have a certain margin where we oversee the projects. Most of the projects are overseen by us. So it's also for the time and effort that we put in overseeing the project. The client knows us and trusts us. So they need us to be there on the project, right? In any case, so what I want to create, however, right, is something that you're talking about. And there are various systems available for it. But what I really want, honestly, is a wall in my office where I just, here are the various and it should be a digital wall, of course, right?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a wall. Yeah.
No, it'll fill up pretty quick with the way you network.
That's one. And second, then I won't be able to make. So, for example, Naeem might fit in marketing, but also might fit in podcast, right? Which is two completely different things. And
so I've tried to come up with a CRM, like, let's start with Excel sheets. Like, let's do it's the tagging, right? Like, every time you talk to a person, you might have a new tag. Correct. And it's the recall of that system should be able to bring you back that stuff that is most relevant for a given opportunity.
Absolutely.
But I need someone to manage it for me. I don't want to do it myself.
Exactly. That's the tough part. So I actually had on the wall in our first office in 2018.
Yeah.
I'd actually created that. And this was not a digital wall, of course.
Yeah.
And, we had like 20 columns. And in each of those, we had the names of the boutique firms that we have in that space so that all of us could see it. It shouldn't take us more than 3 minutes to find that firm.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable if you do it, if it's not digital.
Yeah.
But that wall, there are two, there was somebody who came into our office. He ran a larger consulting firm in Delhi. And I think he set up Konsalidon in Delhi in Southeast Asia, which didn't work out, another failure, and the lesson from that is until your idea is fully formed and your model is fully formed, don't try to franchise it, right? But anyway, so he went ahead and invested quite heavily in setting up Konsalidon Southeast Asia, and the wall was one of the reasons, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, because you could see right there what kind of value you're adding, right? But yeah, I would love to get some sort of a system like that up and running for myself.
Yeah, I need almost like an executive assistant to manage all my hey, it's been 3 months since you last talked to this person. Like,
exactly.
Would you like me to send like a text for you, or should you leave a voice note or something like that? I think that would be a game changer. But
yeah, I mean, there are other ways you can do that as well. So let me talk about one other way in which you can do that is marketing emails, right? So you just send.
I get all of yours.
Keep doing. I'm sure. Send people invites to your events and so on. And I'm notorious for this. I went to a PwC alumni meet the other day, and every person, and I haven't met some of these people for 4 years, 5 years, and everyone who met me said, "I get your messages. I get your messages because I send messages on WhatsApp. I have a bot to do that for me.
Yeah,
I send messages on LinkedIn, and I shouldn't say it. This is one part you might have to cut out. I have a bot that does that for me.
Nice.
And then I have bots doing all of these things for me.
Okay, I need to steal. I need to steal those bots.
Yeah, why not?
Varun, I've just got a notice that we've gone over time. I actually booked it till 5:00, but here's what I usually do. I'm marking things that I haven't talked about with you as round 2, because I think we can go on forever talking about this stuff. Marwan, can I get 10 more? 10's good.
Is it 5?
It's 5 already.
I need to renew my parking ticket. Give me a second.
I haven't paid mine, which reminds me, and no fines yet, but I'll pay for 1 hour.
I've parked really badly. So I need to be
They'll notice
more
your car.
careful. Yeah.
It's 382F.
Yeah, but it's I think it was free.
It's free at 6.
Okay, right. Yeah. Okay.
So, Varun, there's a lot of things I still do want to discuss. We haven't talked about learning and self-improvement. We haven't gone into the challenges that you have, your favorite challenges, the ones that have taught you the most. I also wanted to check a few of your time management strategies, because that is a constant battle, I'm sure, with prioritization. I want to save that for round 2, because we definitely need to bring you back in. But I do want to do a real little rapid fire round with you before we start closing up.
Sounds trying, like fun.
I'm trying a new thing on the podcast, so you'll be guest number 2 that's tried this. So let's start like here. Ice cream or gelato?
Gelato.
Yeah.
Any day. Yeah.
Any day. Okay. Exciting flexibility that leads to volatile results, or boring consistency that leads to sure results?
Just repeat that very quickly.
It's a mouthful. So
yeah.
Exciting flexibility that leads to volatile results, or boring consistency that leads to sure results?
Boring consistency for me.
I knew it. Yeah. Okay. Watching TV or attending a live concert?
Watching TV.
Yeah. If you weren't living in Dubai.
Except if, I have the best tickets in the live concert, those premium VIP tickets, then I'll go for the live concert.
It's kind of like home if it's like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you weren't living in Dubai or in India, where would you be?
Italy.
Italy?
And hence the gelato.
That all makes sense now. Have you been there?
Several times, yes.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, I'll catch you there if you ever move. The one business book you think every business owner should read?
I don't read business books.
No business books. Good.
But I can recommend one because it's written by a friend and he's a mentor.
Yeah, let's plug it. What's his name?
Against the Odds, John Burness.
I feel like I've heard about this. Against the Odds by?
John Burness.
How do you spell his last name?
Burness.
All right. Okay. So if you were to stop running your current businesses, if you weren't a business person at all, what would you be doing?
No, I think I'd be a business person.
No? If I had a gun to your head and I said you can't ever run a business.
Yeah, I'd be running an NGO. So it wouldn't be a business, but it would still be my own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like that independence?
Yeah, for sure.
It's okay. Yeah. I think you partially answered this. But big global giant consultancy or small boutique consultancy? And I'm going to take a guess at the answer before hearing yours, but like neither. It's like you're going for that tectonic shift in how
but look,
these are
both of them add a lot of value. Global consultancies, they're amazing organizations. Some of them give employment to 200,000 people, right? That's amazing. I would prefer that any day to a small boutique consulting firm, but there are lots of problems with that model which need to be solved as well. Global consultancy. Yeah. But not for me, but it's a better model. It's a better business model.
Yeah. Well, whatever these rapid fire questions, whatever comes to mind first is your gut talking, right? So,
of course.
And then the logical brain kind of explains it later on. But it's been so much fun having you. I think the part that I love about you, or when I first met you for coffee that day, it rung true today as well. The fact that you never seem to be giving up ever. I feel like you are smiling and persevering through all the pain and the challenges, and maybe even sadistically asking for more because I think it helps you.
It's fun.
Yeah, I think you found the fun in it, and that's why I think we connect, because I don't look at challenges as something negative. It's just like we're talking about puzzles. It's another game, right? Yeah. Like is that true for you too? Like it's just like another game to play. And I've got so much here in terms of notes. Your story about the Jack Ma, your insights about the coaches and mentors and the advisors. The fact, even the small things that you said, like, you said in passing that your job description probably changes by the week. Just having insights like that, the 60-6-60, the whole model and how you think of business, I think it's been extremely valuable for me. So thank you so much for that. I hope we can do this again. I'll be booking a round 2 with you. Before we close off, is there anything you want to tell the audience, any message that you have for new business owners or small business owners or large business owners, any message you want to give to them or in general?
Yeah. First, thanks a lot for having me. I mean, it was great fun. And keep persisting. I think this one guy sent me a message on LinkedIn and said that he's writing a book called The One Golden Nugget. He's a great marketing guy. You should definitely look him up. Mm-hmm. And he said, what's your one golden nugget? And he collected that from about 1,000 people and put it in his book. That's all his book has, by the way. Golden nuggets from CEOs. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like your podcast, but shorter. Yeah. And he's made 1,000 connections. Brilliant, isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's smart.
Course. And I remember him now, right?
Yeah.
So that one golden nugget, which I gave him, which I'll say again now, keep persisting. So
nice.
And you've noticed that as well. I think I've done that quite a lot over the last few years.
I think so. I think if you were given a charge of a billboard on Sheikh Zayed Road, that's what it would say. It would say,
think so.
Keep persisting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, man. Thanks for that golden nugget too. And I hope we can do this soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Naeem.
Cheers.